I am Tziporah Wayne, and I am so honored and thankful on Holocaust Memorial Day, Remembrance Day, that T.M. Garret is here to join us to remember the day, remember the millions that were murdered and that have been impacted by the Holocaust, and to bring some light from the darkness into today, how we can remember the day and sanctify and to bring up the day, and how what we can take away from it as people and as parents and move forward. And I want to give everyone just a blessing that we learn from today what we can, and we shine our light in the best way possible. I want to share how TM and I met. We met when he came to speak at Chabad in town here in Atlanta, Georgia, and with Rabbi Ari Salish. And I was immediately taken, just compelled to go talk to him. And I looked at him and I just said, how did you become who you are? How did this happen? We often question, can we really change? Is change possible? And the answer is yes. And we have the ability to do it. TM is an example of how change is possible. From the depths of hatred and neo-Nazism and Holocaust denying and leading in the KKK, TM is a living example of what is possible and how we can grow and change in our heart and in our lives. So I invited TM to dinner. When I met him, I said, you have to come for dinner. My husband, of course, is like, what? But he trusts me, thank God. And yeah, I'm going to pass it off to you in a moment. And my husband trusts me. So he said yes. And my daughter at the time, I think, was 4 or 5. And I explained, he used to hate Jewish people just because they're Jewish. Not for a reason, just because that's what he believes. And again, he'll tell you a drop more. And and in the end, TM, she ended up right. She ended up drawing a fish for him. And I'd forgotten on there. She said, and I think I wrote it down, thank you for changing. Mm-hmm. Which blows my mind. That out of the heart of a little girl, the appreciation for changing and for loving and for caring. So how do we do it? We do it one person at a time. And we do it within ourselves. And as parents, how can we pass it on to our children? That will be the focus of today. And so again, I want to introduce TM. We will first talk about remembering again the Holocaust. And TM, I want to please introduce yourself and let us know how we can glean some light from you on this heavy day based on you and your experience.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me today, for having this idea. I know we were talking about this quite a lot in the past, to do something together, some program, and what day could have been better to start to have our first event together than this day, the liberation of Auschwitz, Holocaust Remembrance Day. And yeah, looking at who I am today, an advocate for peace. I work for an organization as an extremism researcher and analyst at the International Center for the Study of Violence and Extremism. I run an organization that helps people leave extremist environments. I'm an interfaith activist. I'm an NAACP member. I'm a member of the local synagogue. And then you said just before that I come from the depths of hatred, and that I used to be actually a Holocaust denier. There was a time in my life where I would not have sat down and done this today, because there was a time when I believed that it didn't happen. And we must mention that I was born and raised in Germany, born in 1975. And let's try to tie this into the Holocaust Remembrance Day and my story a little bit too, so people get understanding of both, because it's actually sort of intertwined. Because, like you said, can people change? You said, like, from hatred to hope. Is that possible? Well, first we have to see if change is possible, yes or no. First of all, nobody is born full of hatred. No one is violent. Nobody's born violent, with a violent mind or anything, or extreme. That is learned behavior. That is also change from that pure human being with a God-given soul. And this human being is changed into something very extreme, hateful. And if it can be changed into that, well, logically, it can be changed back. And that's the same question when you think, especially being German. Germans have the burden of the Holocaust on their shoulders forever. That's just a fact. And I think Germans have done a great job atoning for it, making up for it, making sure it must never happen again. But that takes a while, and it takes, I think, courage as individuals, as governments, as a population to do that. Because look, we're both living in the South. I live outside of Memphis, you live in Atlanta. We know that this country has not learned from its past when we look back at slavery and segregation and whatever. And I think it has also to do that this country never got punished for these things. It is what it is. Germany has been punished and had to learn. But how do people change to a point where they're ready to commit violence and such atrocities like a genocide against a whole part of the population? And the Jewish population in Germany was not small. In Europe in general, but especially in Germany. Germany and the Jewish community were so intertwined, culturally even, that people thought, and if you look at history, what happened after 1945, that people really thought, oh, are we going to euthanize Germans because they might have bad DNA? Because you ask yourself, how can people do this? How can a whole nation, a whole population look away or participate? How is this possible? And I had to ask myself that question too, born in 1975. And I was a bullied kid anyway. I was born into that dysfunctional family. I tried to find out who I am, not fitting in. I grew up without a father, so there was a lot of influence missing. Then you have, of course, you see, Hollywood did a great job bringing some Holocaust education as well. Just look at Schindler's List, for example. Spielberg has done a great job, and still does, by the way. If y'all don't know, look at his Holocaust project. He's interviewing Holocaust survivors all the time. So if anybody wonders what Spielberg does now, that's what he does. Really, really, really awesome. Mm-hmm. And thinking of this change, like in Germany, right? We just learned about the Holocaust, and then you also have, again, 1975, only 30 years after World War II ended, 30 years after the liberation of Auschwitz, which means a lot of my grandparents were still alive. At least my grandmother, my great-grandmother was alive. Most grandparents of my friends were alive. These are people you loved, right? I mean, who doesn't love their grandparents? Usually, in a normal environment,
right?
And then you have to think about the fact that they were around when the Holocaust happened. And my grandfather, he was in the Wehrmacht, He was, I would almost say, a Nazi until he died. I never met him. He died 2 months before I was born. But I heard stories, and you heard like how that subtle, not anti-Semitism was not there anymore, but how easily people still use the word Jews in a negative context, sometimes without thinking about it. They just thought, oh, it's nothing. We know the Nazis are bad. They're gone. They brought only doom over Germany. We know that. But the people just still had a problem with atoning at that time, because they would have had to confront their grandparents or their parents.
So
like my mother was born. My mother was born a day after the liberation of Auschwitz. It's her birthday tomorrow. So she was born there, and she would have had to ask her family and so on, what have you done? Were you involved in anything? That's nothing you want to ask your parents. It's nothing you want to ask your grandparents that you love. But then again, then you think, ask yourself, how can people commit the genocide? And it's actually, unfortunately, so easy explained and so easily done. And the magic word is dehumanization. What the Nazis had done, of course, they picked one of the scapegoats that were picked all the time, the Jewish people. That was already because of literature, but they were thinking, how can we bring the rest of the population to actually commit violent crimes, to kick them out of their houses, to burn their houses, to break everything they have, ending up in murdering all of them systematically. Normal people don't do that, you would think. Normal people like you and me, just anybody. But it's dehumanizing. Once you take the humanity away from anybody, then you're ready to commit violence against the person very easily. And let me give you one example. And I told you that story before, and it just happened just the day before the standoff in the Texas synagogue. I was in Memphis actually at Magdalene Hebrew Academy, and I was talking in front of middle school students. And we're talking about dehumanizing, about bullying, about name calling. Name calling doesn't sound that bad, does it? Everybody has done it in your life. Have you name called somebody with a mock name?
Sure.
I did. I don't know anybody who has not. And unfortunately, pretty much any politician out there has done it. Any journalist has done it. The ethics are really low when it comes to that, because we're all not aware where it leads to. But I will show you this two examples actually. So I was at the school, and when I talk to middle school students or third graders, fourth graders, I'm a little bit more careful with the whole Holocaust and the Nazis and all that. We talk more about bullying and dehumanizing in general, and name calling and labeling, where it leads to. So I asked, who likes cauliflower? So one or two kids, hands up. I like cauliflower. I said, okay, who doesn't? So pretty much everybody. So I asked the kid right next to the one kid who liked cauliflower. I said, okay. So I asked the kid who liked cauliflower, what's your name? He said, AJ. I said, okay, AJ. What if your friend here would start calling you cauliflower head because you like cauliflower and he thinks it's weird? And right that second, his friends started laughing and pushed him around and laughed and called him cauliflower head, right in front of the class, right in front of me, where I just brought an example. This is how quick you forget that his name is AJ. Because you wouldn't have pushed around AJ and laughed about him. Just took that humanity away. All you saw is the cauliflower head that you can push around from one second to the other. Dehumanized.
The separation of person to person there's no heart to heart there. It's just right.
All you see, and this is exactly what the Nazis did. They started educating. It sounds horrible, but this is what they did. They educated the kids to be haters, to be dehumanizers, taking the humanity away from a whole part of the population, which was the Jewish community, calling them, infesting the country, rats, fleas, and whatever, whatever. They're the evil. And all of a sudden you didn't see a human being anymore. And to stay with the Holocaust.
Right.
Trying to understand. I was always anxious to meet a Holocaust survivor. And I never knew how it would be. And I laid down all the big speech that I would tell a Holocaust survivor and what I would say, and I don't know. The first time I met one was actually in New York, and I forgot my whole speech, of course. All we did was hugging each other, and there's a famous picture on Facebook of it. It was Tibor And if you're listening, Tibor, I'll forward it to you if not. and we both cried. And I didn't ask for forgiveness, because I think it's called It's called forgiveness. It's not for askiness, right? I think you shouldn't ask for forgiveness, because the person who gives the forgiveness is giving the forgiveness. All I could say, I'm sorry. No, I apologized. I'm sorry for how I thought. I'm sorry how I felt. And we met on Holocaust Remembrance Day 2 years ago. First time that I met a Holocaust survivor, and we just cried there. And unfortunately, we had to part ways right after that. So the second Holocaust survivor was also very emotional at the Museum of Tolerance that is run by the Simon Wiesenthal Center in LA. And I had a talk there. And just before the talk, there was an old man with a white beard, and somebody told me that it's a Holocaust survivor. He's from Germany originally. So that's a double emotional thing, because not every Holocaust survivor is from Germany, but he was from Germany, from Krefeld, Rolf Gompertz. He also wrote several books, and I found out he also will hold a talk at the museum about his story. And we were like, when is yours? He said, well, in 30 minutes. And I was like, yeah, well, mine is in an hour. So now I have to go and prepare. So unfortunately, we were like, okay, we cannot listen to each other's stories. And I went and sat down where I was supposed to prepare. And all of a sudden, Rolf Gompertz walks up and prepares his talk. So we're talking right behind each other. Look, he was talking, I was talking after him. And I had no idea. So I was listening to his talk, and I didn't even know I would. And he said something very, very interesting. He thought, first of all, very emotional. And he told two stories that are very important in this context. The one story was, it was Kristallnacht, 1939. And he was about 10 years old. He already witnessed anti-Semitism, that he couldn't swim in the same pools and whatever. And the simple stuff that happened. It was not that bad for him. He asked himself why. And then Kristallnacht, the soldiers came, the Nazis. And the officer who led that troop was a little bit older, apparently. And he saw the Iron Cross that Rolf's father had from World War I. And that older soldier said, oh, we're not going to take the Patriots. And they left him alone. He told his guys to leave, but it was enough. They decided to leave Germany after that and emigrate to the US. But here we see that it was actually bad enough that it had to be an Iron Cross that brought back at least some connection between the Nazi officer and Rolf's father. But there was a connection other than, okay, this is a rat that has to go in the gas.
Right.
Because that was the message that the Nazis said. And so they were lucky that there was a simple moment of humanization, of some connection there, that older officer saw him as a human being, as equal. Right. If that would have been a younger officer who was indoctrinated for 10 years already, who didn't have these older values, he wouldn't have cared. The picture of the dehumanized picture of the rat would have been bigger than the picture of the Jewish German patriot that fought in World War I. You see?
Yes.
It started for younger ones, it started earlier.
Oh wow. That image is so powerful of the person being bigger than the rat. Which picture do you follow at that in that split moment? You said a moment of humanity. That it's just so shocking. So please tell me.
And it was shocking for Rolf too. So he went to the US. And by the way, I love sharing testimonies of Holocaust survivors. There's a great program in Germany, by the way, it's called Zweitzeugen. It's called Second Witnesses, where non-Jews adopt the stories of Holocaust survivors and keep telling them and keeping that legacy. So I encourage everybody to look the program up. It's great. And that's what I a little bit to listen to the stories and bring those stories into my stories, because it's valuable and we have to talk about this. So he went from Krefeld, Germany to the US, became a journalist and whatever. And then 50 years later, 1989, the city of Krefeld in Germany did a commemoration, and they were wondering what happened to all the Jews. I mean, who survived? Where did they go? So they started researching, and they found him in the US. And they wrote him a letter. Said, "Dear Mr. Gompertz, we're commemorating the 50 years of Kristallnacht, and we would like to have a program and invite those who have survived, apologize, and just honor that."
Mm.
And he got the letter, and he didn't want to go. He promised he will never return to Germany again.
Right.
And he's it's interesting. He wrote a couple of books about the relationships between Christians and Jews as well. So if you look him up, Rolf Gompertz, I believe one of his books is called My Jewish Brother Jesus. That's how one of his books is called. Anyway, so he's really into, and so he's very, very spiritual, and he believes, and he was like, and he thought he was fighting with himself. He hesitating. Should I go? Should I not go? And he was like, nah, I can't. Until he said it felt like God spoke to him, and God asked him one question. Imagine you would have been a German. And answer this question, yes or no. Would you have been a Nazi?
Wow.
And he thought about that, and he said, and here we come to the part. Nobody is going like waking up in the morning. Oh yeah, come on, let's be a Nazi. There's more to it. Or let's be a hater. Or let's commit violence against people. This is taught behavior, very often purposely. And in the case of Nazi Germany, it was purposely, with the goal to have the whole population that far that they dehumanized the Jewish community. And he realized he didn't have an answer. He said, I don't know. If I would have been German, maybe I would have been a Nazi, maybe not. I don't know. I don't know the circumstances. I don't know what happens in individuals' lives. And then he decided,
you can give.
And this is when he decided to attend the commemoration festivities in Krefeld, Germany, and since he has been back. But this was very important because he realized that these people just didn't wake up one day, and this has nothing to do with bad DNA or just all Germans are bad. He just realized that and said, okay, we need to reconnect. And just to stay with that topic, a third story, and then I'll give it back to you. I was speaking at a high school in Chicago, and at the end, two kids were walking up, both around 18. One was Jewish and the other one was not.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked me, TM, what do you think about punching Nazis or neo-Nazis? And I was like, you mean like what Antifa does and really use violence against people just because, well, they're bad. We hate Nazis, so we can punch them, right? And, the urge is sometimes there, It's easy to give in to that instinct to punch a Nazi, but I've been one. And punching me, I've got punched, I've got shot at, I've got chased through town. I feared for my life, even as a Nazi, that I would be killed by people who wanted to punch Nazis. And I don't want sympathy for that. I probably deserved that. But that feeling was there. But the more important thing than my feeling of fear that I had, I brought it over myself. So I don't want any pity for that, please. The important lesson we have is what it did with me, besides that fear. It just made me more hateful and hated them even more. What changed me at the end was something I thought I didn't deserve at the time. Compassion and unconditional love. Because somebody else that I hated saw me as a human being. He humanized me. And so I could lower my barrier and actually humanize him and started to listen. And we will talk about listening in just a little bit more. So with these two kids, I told them I got beaten, I've got shot at, and what it cost. And I said, no, I don't think punching Nazis is good. Because what do you want? Do you want people to go away or the opinions? Because if they go away, well, they will go to another school, they will go to another town, do the exact same thing there. That problem isn't solved. It's just pushed to the side. So let me tell you a story. I'm a storyteller, you already can tell. I told them too, let me tell a story. I said to the non-Jewish kid, the Jewish kid's name was Avi. I said to the non-Jewish kid, do you want to punch Avi? I said, no. I said, okay. And that's a little bit like the cauliflower head story. I said, so, and you, well, how would you think if we would say we push Avi in the oven? I said, of course not. And he was, oh my God, no. I said, but it's much, much easier to push a rat in the oven, right? And they said nothing. I said, you still want to punch Nazis? Because this is, unfortunately, it's the same dehumanization, and we achieve the opposite of what we want to do.
Right. It's the violence.
Dehumanizing, labeling.
Yeah.
Causes violence. And you were ready. You were ready to punch a human being just because looks like a Nazi, let's punch them. You know, I always say, like my radicalization started with Holocaust jokes. Off-color jokes. I didn't know any Jews at the time. I just got a lot of attention. But I got labeled, I got put in a box, they closed the lid, put the box on the shelf and labeled it with Nazi kid. Don't get me wrong, I did something very anti-Semitic. But for which sake, you know, for what was my intention? Not to be an anti-Semite or hating Jews. I didn't know any. I didn't even know Nazis still exist at the time. I was like 12, 13. I thought the Nazis that were hung in Nuremberg in 1946. I didn't know anything about neo-Nazis or skinheads. That was just to grab attention. That was my intention. Mm-hmm. So I did something anti-Semitic, but not with the intention. Unintentionally. That's why I call it unintentional anti-Semitism. It's not the same as intentional anti-Semitism. But looks like a duck, you know, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, must be a duck. And I looked like an anti-Semite and a Nazi, and I was in the box. And once you're in a box, nobody saw the human being inside anymore. And this is how people get put in boxes all the time and labeled. Sometimes it's labels we think are harmless, like Jewish, Christians, Muslims, man, woman, good in school, bad in school. But these are labels we see. You see, like a teacher sees their kids, okay? But you don't only see names. You also see the kids who are good in school and the kids who are bad in school. And you already have them sorted away a little bit. You labeled them. Unfortunately, that is all a little bit of dehumanizing, even if we separate these things like that. And that's sort of harmless, but it can be taken too far very, very quickly if we start to see nothing else but the label. Oh, that person is Jewish. I have nothing in common with them. They must be different. Stay away from me. Then it's easier to think, oh, they're infesting the country. We need to get rid of them. Or they're Christian, or they're Muslims, you know. And all of a sudden you have somebody grabbing a rifle and shooting up a mosque, a synagogue, or a black church, or whatever, because we have nothing in common with them. We don't want them around. They're dehumanized because all you see is the label. It's like a bubble, and the bubble is painted with the color. But if you scratch off the label or the color of the bubble, what do you see inside? A human being. And that you can't see what the label says anymore, right? And it becomes unimportant. Because you realize, wow, even that neo-Nazi is worrying about his kids the same as you do. And look, don't get me wrong, if I ask somebody who's Jewish to show empathy, for somebody who looks like a neo-Nazi, that's unbelievably hard. But I'm not asking for sympathy. These are two different things. We always need to make clear, I do not agree with you. I do not agree with what you say, but I want to hear where you come from. I want to listen. Because we will come to talking about children parenting a little bit more. That will tie right in here. It will tie right in. So I talked enough. I let you talk for a little bit.
Whew. Thank you for sharing your experiences. There are many more, your stories, and we're not done yet. So what strikes me, TM, out of everything you're saying is the cognitive psychology that comes into place. The automatic drive for our brain to put things into boxes, to make sense of the world and of life and of people, and how we, it's a very powerful image to me. I'm a visual learner, And when you think of the pictures of what's bigger, I'm going back to what I said before. If the picture is of a person, it's harder to dehumanize. But once you, like you're saying, you put that layer on top of, or you put them into a group, even just again, in your mind, put them into a box, into a group, they are this. There you go. I'm going to bring it to my life for one moment. I became a Torah observant Jew, a Jewish woman 20 years ago. And I moved to Passaic, New Jersey, which on the outside looks very black and white, shall we say. However, when I moved there, because it's easy just to look at it and say, black and white, for me, not for me, right? The instantaneous decisions that we make, right? The same that happened with your friends as a boy. I mean, very different life circumstances, I'm not trying to equate those in the least. However, once I was living in Passaic, New Jersey, I saw there was so much diversity within. And there were different colors inside, which really was a life lesson for me of how we cannot judge a book, a person by its cover. And TM, you're mentioning, and we are so quick. They're instant decisions. Viktor Frankl, right, talks about a Holocaust survivor who spoke of the stimulus and the response. There's a moment of pause and a moment where we have the freedom of choice and the power of choice. And what do we do with it? And if we're able to insert humanity and compassion, it's a lesson for me and for all of us. We're so quick to judge. It's easy to judge. The challenge is, how can I bring compassion, you're saying, and love to this moment? And we're human and we fail, and no one's expecting an overnight change, as it wasn't overnight for you.
And that is important. You said nobody expects an overnight change. Unfortunately, some people do. And this is also very timely, January 6th last year. And I just wrote an op-ed for that. I will see if it's published anywhere. We're talking exactly about these things too. Like, I didn't change overnight. I walked 10 miles into this forest of hatred, and I had to get 10 miles out of it. And this doesn't happen overnight. Genuine change takes a while. And the problem is that we hear in the media, and everybody probably who's listening can agree that they heard it, and they're sick of it to hear the phrase, it's too little too late, right? Well, if it would be too little too late, I would not be here today, And all these people who maybe stormed the Capitol January 6th, all these people who had all these weird conspiracy theories, QAnon, and what all we saw, or people who leave hate groups, even if it's late. In my case, it was very late, 15 years, and it took a while. And it was a little first. You have to start with one thing.
Baby steps.
Please, people, be patient. Baby steps, please, people, be patient. Don't do this. I tried to sit down with them like once. They wouldn't listen. Big problem. They wouldn't listen. So most people, when they do something and try to talk sense into the other, who are trapped in these conspiracy theories or these outlandish ideas, then we go into this conversation with a mission. I am right and you're wrong. And I'm convinced you that I'm right. And this is the mission, right? To convert the other side to your side without listening where they're coming from, because people always also remember. Yeah, there should be a debate. Yeah, debate. There should be a conversation which includes listening, and we come back to the children. We're not there, but right now we're talking about adults. How hard it is with adults, because in adults it's already too late. They have made these experiences and are acting exactly the same. With the children, we can prevent these things from happening. But in adults, we have just to realize that people who believe in stuff like that, they are afraid of something. Like a child is afraid of the monster under the bed. And we as parents, we know that these monsters are not there. But the fear is real, even though it's not substantial. And how do we deal with the children? How do we deal with it? With compassion, unconditional love. We don't call our child out, are you stupid? There's no monster. No, we take that fear for real, because the fear is real. And it's always, this is how hatred is created. Ignorance, because also the fear of the unknown, that what you don't know or don't want to know, leads to fear. And fear, if it's unchecked, can lead to hate and violence, especially if dehumanization plays a role in this last step from fear to hate.
Yeah.
But it's so much easier. It goes quick. Dehumanizing, it goes from fear to hate, just like this.
Look, Champ, thank you. We are such an instant gratification society, right? We have, I think, the attention span of adults today, I believe the attention span's gotten shorter and shorter. And I think it's 7 seconds.
7 seconds, I believe. Yep.
7 seconds.
Goldfish. And this is why Twitter has only like 100 or 320 the digits, and Facebook too. Until you reach the read more button, this is when your attention span is gone. So whenever you have an important message on Facebook, make sure you make the point before it says read more, because no one is clicking on it. I guarantee. I tested it.
Right. Wow.
I tested it. I got really weird comments because some people just read like everything that was before read more, and I actually clarified it already. And when you click, and I could see the comments. I was like, oh, it's true.
Yeah. No, we expect things so quickly, including, so I'll transition now. I'll introduce myself for a moment. I am my Happy Heart coach, and I am working with parents on positive and present parenting, really distilling that you can really equate in any way, shape, or form the lessons then to the lessons now. That's not my intention. I want to be very clear about that. But TM, as a parent, as a grandparent, right? And with your life experience, how can we bring it down? You touched on it already. In knowing our 2-second attention span, our 7-second attention span, which is even less in children, right? And our nature is to just quickly make a decision, put people, including ourselves and our children, in boxes. As educators, it's so easy. I'm a former high school guidance counselor. I am a certified trainer of the Nurtured Heart approach. And I've also been a preschool MORA and educator. I've worked with people across the spectrum. And we're so quick to judge. So how can we distill down your experiences and the lessons you've gained and that you share with others as a peace activist? How can we bring that into parenting today? I'd love to hear more about the monster under the bed. And you really broke that down for me when we spoke, and it really brings it to life.
It does. Maybe let me tell yet another story. I just love to tell stories. But it is the same message, what we can do, and it applies to anybody. And we're talking about boxes, and you said even as a teacher, you put children in boxes and you label them, and then you don't. I would almost say you don't care anymore. You maybe as a teacher, you don't even have the time to care. And if the label is there, then you just don't see it. How the life circumstances of these children are, that you just label it because it's easier to put a label on it, but it doesn't bring a solution.
TM, you mentioned it's unintentional. It's unintentional.
And it is.
And these are kind-hearted, loving people who went into education because they want to make a difference in the lives of children. It's very normal, and there's no blame here, by the way. This is human nature and psychology at its best and worst. So please.
Right. You're absolutely right there. And what happens, especially with boxes, and let's wrap up the story, how we can prevent like adults from committing atrocities. And then we tie in how we do the same with children, because it's similar but not. So let's stay with the adults for a second. And also, I was also speaking around Chicago. You remember Alison Kruslovan of the Sam Wiesenthal Center? She was with us at the dinner, and she organized the whole speaking tour with the Sam Wiesenthal Center. And we went to another meeting, and it was led by a rabbi. It was like a lunch meeting, and the rabbi was like, "Can I share a story before TM?" I said, "Sure." And he shared the story of the young woman who just a week before, it was the time when all the anti-Semitic attacks happened in New Jersey by the Black Hebrew Israelites. And there was just the news everywhere. And that young woman at the University of Michigan, Detroit, saw all that, and she had a mezuzah at her dorm door. And it got stolen. And she was, of course, seeing that in the news, and she wasn't sure how intentional that is. Again, intentional, unintentional. And she even said that. She's actually now well known and spoke about it a couple of times as well. So she was, how intentional is this? What's happening here? Fortunately, they could find out because there was cameras on campus, that it was a student who actually didn't live that far from her. So with the help, I believe the ADL was there and the Chabad house, and they decided, let's sit down and talk, because the police asked the young woman, what do you want to do? Press charges? And the young woman said, no. So what do you want to do? Like, I want to sit down and talk. We're like, hold on, that's probably a Nazi, an anti-Semite. See, that young man was already in the box, right? He did something anti-Semitic. He stole that mezuzah, right? Must be a Nazi, must be an anti-Semite. You're Jewish, you're not sitting down with that person. But she insisted, she sits down. And so they did it with the faculty and everything. And that young man had no idea what he had done. He apologized, he gave her the money for a new mezuzah, and he agreed to take a tour through the Holocaust Museum. Now, again, she didn't press charge. So what everybody has put the young man in the box already and labeled it. Must be a Nazi, must be an anti-Semite, because he did something anti-Semitic, right? And there's two things what we could have done at that moment. The one thing is nothing. Lean back and wait until the guys with the white hoods and the swastikas open the box and pull that young man out, and it's too late. Or we open the box and see the human being inside and check out, was this intentional, unintentional? Is he on the scale from 1 to 10? Where is he in radicalization? Is he radicalized or not? Is he just before a real hate crime? Because stealing a mezuzah, it is a crime. Stealing, destroying stuff, it is. You can find it's a hate crime, but we need to look at the intention. And the intention was not the hatred in that case. And she realized that. She pulled that human being out, set him back on track. They must realize that she maybe prevented that young man from becoming the next synagogue shooter. Because again, at some point, the neo-Nazis would have pulled him out. When nobody else wanted him, when he maybe would have gotten kicked out of college. He fortunately did. But I've seen that here in Memphis. That was 3 years ago, 2018, almost 4 years ago, midterms. It was around the time, everything was big anyway. And a school kid wrote the N-word on a table. And you can imagine that was big, was on Facebook, was everywhere. And everybody was calling that a kid gets expelled from school. Nobody wants a racist kid in school. No parent wants that. You're not sitting right next to the kid. But nobody cared to see, has that kid picked up the N-word from Uncle Baba last night? Or from Twitter, Instagram? Or maybe the parents are on the Klan? We don't know. We don't know anything. All we wanted immediately, that kid did something racist, must be a racist, kick the kid out of school. That would have been set to fail. I got involved in the conversation. It was really, really hard to intervene at all. But this is the same thing. This is a great power we have as a community, any community, when something like that happens, to decide what happens to these human beings, often boys, that feel misunderstood. Because, okay, I guarantee the kid knew the N-word was bad. And I guarantee that was the point.
And
otherwise
especially younger kids. Adults, a different conversation, but especially with kids. And you're saying we're so quick to judge. Right.
And when I heard Holocaust jokes, I knew it was bad too. Seriously, I knew the Nazis were the bad guys when I was 13. That was the whole point. I wanted to be the bad boy telling these jokes, getting that attention. And I guarantee the kid with the N-word wanted to get that attention. He knew it was bad. And even the kid stealing the mezuzah knew, hey, this is bad. He wanted to be the bad boy for whatever reason, but not because, I hate Jews, that's why I steal a mezuzah. I wasn't, I hate Jews, I'm cracking Holocaust jokes. And this kid was maybe not, I hate black people, that's why I'm writing this N-word. But these people are often, we're chasing adults out of streets where they move just because we find out they're doing this, or we dox them, put the stuff on the news. And tell everybody that person said something, said this, instead of getting to the ground where this is coming from and trying to help these people to change, because the change is more likely than these people that they stay silent, because those people just get more radical and more radical and more radical. At some point, if they have really stuff going on in their lives, maybe grab a weapon and shoot something up or commit an atrocity, or January 6th. January 6th, it was people, and if I say like you and me, I'm saying that even more than you think. There was in that crowd an Orthodox Jew from New York, and there was a Holocaust denier in the same crowd storming the Capitol. They were united by the smallest common denominator they had, which was in that case that conspiracy theory from the stolen election and ultra-nationalism. It went so far that it had a Holocaust denier and an Orthodox Jew being in the same crowd, not caring what the other side does.
The lowest common denominator, you said. The point of connection of the point where they agreed as human beings on one point, that's what brought them together to do this.
Right, and they were ready to hang the acting vice president. We've seen it on TV. People were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," and then you have these two unlikely friends, not friends. They probably didn't talk in there, but even if they saw each other, we have another enemy today, right? There's a bigger enemy, and that was in that case liberals. Oh, they would say libtards, and liberals would say Trumpsters and racists, or you say libtards and baby killers. Oh, and then we're name calling. All of a sudden, you are ready. Normal people, you have business people, that one woman who was shot. She was a soldier before. She voted for Obama before that, and she stormed the Capitol. She got shot. A normal person who got radicalized and thinking they were doing the right thing, and they were ready using violence against fellow Americans because they were evil. The other side is evil. We are fighting for the good. We have to stop them. This is when I found what radicalized me at the end, when I found out, when I was always like, why did Hitler hate the Jews? Even when I was fully radicalized, I was like a Jew hater and a Holocaust denier, but I didn't really know why until somebody presented the protocols of the Elders of Zion. Right. And it was presented to me like, oh, that's the ultimate evil. They want to take over the world, and we can save the world from them doing this. And you felt like a superhero, good versus evil. This is how all these people felt, these normal people like you and me. Again, there was an Orthodox Jew in there and a Holocaust denier in the same crowd. They were triggered by these things and all of a sudden ready to commit violence, deadly violence against the people inside there. This is crazy. And these people didn't change overnight. They didn't. So what can we do with children? The monster under the bed, right? I
want to, one moment. I want to say it's, and I will, again, bring it down to, from up here to, parenting, right? To everyday parenting today, right? How it's so easy to label our children, how we see our child as this. And I talk about flipping it with a child, I'd say, how about a child is bossy? Your kid's bossy. You're not bossy. You're not used to them being bossy. You label them as bossy.
But it might be true. The child might be bossy, but do you know why?
But there are two questions. Number one, why? I don't know if we'll ever get a real answer as to why. We don't know 100%. But if you flip it also and you view it in the positive, what's another way to view bossy? A leader, determined, they know what they want, they're focused. It's all in how they communicate it. Children just don't know how to channel their energy. One more thing I want to say about, I forgot what it was. I don't remember what it was. It'll come back to me. Oh, I do know what it was. That people often talk of, there's a quote, I don't remember who it was from, that children want attention. Right? It's easy to think they want attention. And of course they want attention. But why do they want attention? They want connection. Everybody. Children, when they are pulling on our sleeves or talking when we're on the phone, or they want our connection, not just our attention. They want our presence, not our gifts. Our greatest gift that we can give our children is our presence. And we're so busy today. We're so busy staring at our phones all the time. I mean, I would say we're all guilty of it, anyone watching. I'd say we're all guilty of it, right? Everything's in our phones, in the palm of our hands. Who'd have thought, right? Who'd have thought that would happen? Mm-hmm. So, and it's easy to just jump to a conclusion. They're bossy. And it's funny. Oh, look, they really know what they want. And how can I, as you're saying, stop and listen for a moment on what they want and how they want to connect with me? What does a child want more than anything? They want their parent. Who do they call out for when they're sleeping? They don't call out for their teacher. They don't call out for their uncle. They call out, typically speaking, for a parent. We are the ones
Correct.
who have such ability to make a difference for our children. And if we get out of our own way, right? And they just copy what we do. As you're saying, behavior, hatred is learned, and so is love and compassion. And they're often just mirroring what we're saying and what we're doing. And if we're able to tap into, as often as humanly possible, granted, we get hungry, angry, lonely, tired, overwhelmed, granted. If we're able to tap into compassion and what is the underlying behavior, what is it pointing to? What might be causing that? We don't know 100%, but getting curious.
And the question is, what is compassion, right? Compassion is also, to have compassion, you need to have the ability to show empathy and understanding and that unconditional love. And one important thing I think many people are missing here, and I think it's easier with children because the monster under the bed, we show a lot of compassion. We know the fear is real, the monster is not. Some parents really would call their children out on it. Oh, you're stupid, there's no monster. But most parents wouldn't do that. But when kids grow up, okay, now you're a man, now you're a woman, now we don't need to show this unconditional love anymore. This is sort of what we sometimes do. That is very tricky. But also the understanding of the children, like that understanding where it's coming from. Like you say, they're bossy. Okay, it might be true. But you also need to see, okay, why is that? That kid has sometimes a 3-year-old toddler or 4-year-old doesn't have another way to express themselves, what they want to say. Well, then let's check into that. It is weird, like we teach our children to walk and to talk just to tell them to sit down and shut up, right?
Yes.
And this is what it is, and to tell them what to do for the rest of their lives until they're grown up, and then we stop, and then we only judge instead of listening. And this is the part, listening. And this is with adults. Listen to where the fears are coming from, where they are coming from. Maybe shut up for a moment and let your child talk. Where is it coming from? It might be complete nonsense, but you won't know if you don't listen. If you only judge, if you have only this label, oh, my kid is bad all the time. Like we have a couple of friends where you see they're called, the kids are bad. So, well, no, they're just kids. Maybe just listen, for example, to see what they want in this particular moment. I have one experience that was even when I was in that movement, but I remember we were visiting friends, and that woman's son was maybe 3, talking okay, but he had like a bottle and was like talking very unclear all the time. And that kid was at the refrigerator and wanted something and said it, and the mother was just shutting the child off. Be quiet, you can't have this and this right now. She didn't even care to listen what the child was wanting to say, or tell the child, take that bottle out of your mouth so I can understand what you want. Because the mother didn't care what the child wanted. She only cared what she wanted, and this was the child to shut up. Instead to ask, take that bottle out of your mouth so I know what you want. Maybe the child wanted something to drink, and that's what it was, something to eat or to drink. And the mother just didn't care. She was busy smoking and yelling and whatever.
Just busy.
And even my worst times, I called the mother out. I said, even I understood what the child wants. Why don't you listen to your kid? I found that terrible. But this is what many parents do, and also unintentional. This mother was just ignorant, she was just bad. Right. But a lot of parents don't even see that they're doing this, because I think there's a lot of wrong parenting tips out there too.
Yeah, I want to touch on something. Yes, I mean, I talked to you all day. When I was a guidance counselor, there was a child in elementary school who was known to be a bully, young child. And I'm not saying, this is not speaking to how great I am. Please don't hear it as that. It illuminated on a lesson that you're just mentioning. that it's ignorance. It's unintentional. Okay, that's the point. Is I sat with him and I said, and I have this thing, is it helpful or is it hurtful? Is it helpful for a little child? Is it helpful or is it hurtful? And I said, look, I'm not upset with you. I'm just talking with you. I want to understand, right? Out of the conversation, I have this, this little, like a little ladder. I said, here's hurtful, kicking, right? And above that is name calling. Above that is ignoring, right? And then you have neutral. And then you have saying a kind word or just, right? And then you're really helping them, like at the top. It's a short ladder, right? And I said, he said on his own, well, I'm not able to get up here to the top. I said, no one expects you to. No one expects you to. I said, all you can try to aim for is the next rung, and the next part on the ladder. Maybe not say something. If he's bothering you, just go do something else. And literally, it blows my mind. And it illuminated that he just didn't know another way to do it. He just didn't know. It really highlighted this young child had no idea. It was just, call it ignorance, right? Call it unintentional, right? He had no idea. And guess what? He literally was it was done. Literally, it was one conversation, like you're saying, the story of the mezuzah.
Yeah.
And he
I have another story.
I'm sure.
Yeah, and I have another story that ties in there. It makes sense because you gave the child an alternative to think about what else can I do instead of reaching this. Okay, I can do something else. But you didn't, and important this, you didn't tell, you were listening. You didn't tell the child that he's wrong and that you don't care for his feelings because his feelings were real. The child had a problem putting his feelings into social action. And this is what we have as kids and adults, for example. For example, I worked with a mother who's got kids, and especially one of the kids was drifting to the very far right, and she's more liberal. The father, they're divorced. He's more conservative, and the biggest point where they were fighting about was abortion. The old thing, abortion. Okay, you can't get over this topic. And I told her too, okay, it's not that every Democrat is like a baby killer. Nobody wakes in the morning up like with the lust of killing babies. I said, this is what the conservatives, of course, don't get, that it's not like that. Of course not. That's something different behind it. But this is what they think. But the approach to tell your child, oh, you're stupid, this is not what Democrats think. Well, the kid will shut down. It's like the same thing. You try to convince your child, oh, you're wrong and we're right. Who said that the kid is not right as well? It's a different perspective. To be honest, we can talk about this pro-life and pro-choice all day long, but we can agree on that both sides don't want abortions, right? Nobody wants an abortion. No mother, you don't tell me no matter where you stand that you think, oh, this mother's getting pregnant, doesn't care if they're getting an abortion. Don't tell me that. I guarantee every mother has some sort of feeling when they have to go through it. So nobody wants that. This is very important to understand.
Come off of that topic. It's a touchy one. Let's come off of that topic. It's very sensitive. Yeah. I appreciate
there's a reason. What I said. Just what I said with the kid. I said, let the kid have this opinion, this feeling. His feeling is okay. He can stay with that all day long. He can stay with any feeling he has that he doesn't like certain people, he doesn't like this, he doesn't like cauliflower. That's okay. You don't have to convince him to like cauliflower all of a sudden. That is your feeling. The secret is to see how they put that feeling into social action. Okay?
Right.
And see, what if we, just to mention it one time more, what if we come up with a society where abortion is just not a necessity, where it's not a thing, period? Both sides don't like it anyway. Why don't work on a society like this instead of work against each other? Because you have the same feeling at the end. Your social action output, your social output is a different one. And this is with the children the same, like the child that you said. The social output. He didn't have another social output than bullying because he felt underprivileged.
Right.
Yeah, he felt underprivileged. That kid that you were talking about felt underprivileged and set to fail and knew, I will never reach the top. So let's just be the bad boy, okay?
So it was right, because the baby step, I was like, you don't have to go to the top. It's just, what's the next step toward not hurting? What's the next step toward helping? So I want to, so you mentioned, we're talking about ignorance can lead to fear, can lead to hate. It's ignorance. And I want to bring that to parenting, by the way, is most of us grew up with negativity, unintentional. Really, that word is really powerful today. Unintentional. I'm not saying, God forbid, the Holocaust was unintentional. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form. That was actually intentional. Intentionally driven by Hitler. His name be erased. And focused. So, but parents today, like most of us grew up with negativity. Again, not blaming our parents. Our parents did the best they could, and their parents did the best they could. But most of us grew up with negativity that we don't want to pass down to our children, but we react automatically and in default. And it's easy to see what's going wrong instead of what's going right. It's just easier. We don't have to think about it. We're wired for survival to see what the problems are. Makes sense.
But yeah, you need to see the problem to see a solution. The difference is also, again, the output, the social output, the social action that we have. Are we problem-oriented or solution-oriented? So we have to see the problem, but we can stay on the problem and start riding a dead horse that goes nowhere.
Yes.
Or we can be solution-oriented and then see, okay, this didn't work out in the past. We have to do a different approach. And again, to talk about inclusion, to talk about compassion, to talk about get to know each other and find out that the commonalities are so much bigger. Because one last story or thing, in 2018, I organized a conference in Memphis. It was the Memphis Peace Conference. And it was an interfaith conference in the morning. And in the afternoon, I thought, well, everybody does that, like for World Religion Day or Peace Week, and hold hands and sing Kumbaya. And then everybody goes home and say, this was great. Let's do it again next year. But what can we take home? So I decided, let's do another conference the same day and a panel. And I said, let's invite the movers and shakers in the Memphis community to see what we can do to make the community a better place. And I invited the feminist, I invited the liberal, I invited this, I invited the Black woman, I invited and I didn't invite and I'm a little bit more I'm a mix between conservative and liberal, probably somewhere in between. But I was like, I didn't invite the ultra-conservative Trump voter. And that was a big chunk of the population who voted for Trump. And I said, I can't just exclude people and think I make the community a better place if I exclude half of the people. How is that supposed to work? So I approached a friend of mine, actually, from whom I knew he is right up the alley. And I said, would you be interested to attend the panel in that function representing these 30%? Okay. And he said, sure. He said, I have a couple of requirements. It's really important. Said we're not talking about the typical topics where we can't find common ground anyway. Because back to the dead horse, we would ride a dead horse. We would be problem oriented. Let's be solution oriented and maybe find out what we can agree on. Again, very unlikely you come together. You think you have nothing in common. And you start to talk and listen to each other. And all of a sudden, they thought the Trump supporter will think, oh, I have more in common with a libtard than I thought. Sorry for the name calling, but that's just as an example, or vice versa. Mm-hmm. Oh, I had more in common with a Trumpster than I thought. For the first time, because you were listening. You did not sit down with a mission to convert the other side, to tell them I'm right and you're wrong. Listen to what you have in common. And all of a sudden, the rest becomes much less important, not unimportant, but much less important. And you can focus on the things where you can work it out.
Yes, TM, like you were saying, that it doesn't mean, like with a child, with the monster under the bed, their feelings are real. Their feelings are real. And saying, there's no monster under the bed. I still feel scared. As opposed to just being there and saying, that would be scary if you thought there's that I understand why you might be scared. I'm here. I'll protect you. As opposed to showing compassion and love and availability, as opposed to just shutting down the kid, what your feelings don't make a difference. So, but what you're saying is again, not having to agree, but at least listening really is the key here. So if we can stop ourselves
Empathy,
long
not
enough,
sympathy.
if we can stop ourselves long enough to listen to what the other person is saying, this will help our children. This will help our relationships, our marriages, our lives. We feel so compelled to blurt out whatever it is in our brains today. And really, if we're able to just really listen and hear, not just listen, but to hear. And again, you're saying have compassion. And I want to wrap up for a moment. I'm not saying that we're done altogether before we're wrapping up. I do work with spiritually minded and growth oriented parents to support moving from conflict to deeper connection and joy, and creating a vision for your family and for what you want, and taking baby steps toward reaching it, not just all of a sudden overnight expecting perfect results, because it just doesn't happen. How can we be kind to ourselves and our children and our families in the process? I have a sheet that I made. It is 25 meaningful ways to say, I love you. We say, it's easy to say, I love you. I love you. But we often don't, and some of us didn't hear it. And some of us don't know how to express it, how to say it. So in the event that might be hard, there are 25, I have at least 25 other ways to say, I love you, meaningful ways for our children. And again, it applies to any relationship. So if you're interested in getting that, please put in the chat, 25 ways and your email. TM and I believe are the only ones that are going to see that. But if you're interested in that, you can share it with someone in your family, or you can use it yourself. But so TM, please, I want to, give an opportunity. I could talk to you for, like I said, for hours. There's so much. What would you like to give as a wrap up from remembering the Holocaust to today? What can you share with us?
First of all, the most important, and this is why I was talking about adults, this is why I was talking about January 6th, because we have a toxic political environment in this country where you see this labeling and dehumanizing, where people are ready to chase other people out of restaurants because you think they belong to the other party, where you think you can go to the Capitol, storm it, and want to hang the acting vice president. And that was a dehumanizing process that we've seen there that could lead far further than just storming the Capitol. I am from Germany, and it happened there. It led to a genocide. It happened. We're not on a good way. And we can start changing. Well, we're changing actually nobody. We can talk and listen and make people change, because they will change themselves, because they start realizing that there's humanity. And this is the important one. See that humanity, because just as an example, if you have let me use these mock words for a second, okay? A Trumpster and a libtard, and they sit down, and all of a sudden, it's not about convincing each other, but talking about commonalities. And all of a sudden, oh, that libtard is not as the other libtards. And I have heard that a lot. And I have even heard that from a Jewish woman who befriended a white supremacist in Washington, D.C., and they were both kind of bullied. Now, like, oh, that Jew is not like the other Jews that I knew or that I thought I knew, or this black person is not, or why, So discovering humanity through listening, and you're like breaking down stereotypes, stereotypical thinkings. And this is what we can do with adults or young adults, but we can prevent that to start with when we talk about children. And the Nazis, and here comes the very scary part, the Nazis were successful before they had a new generation that were brought up by the Hitler Youth, for example. These were people that were growing up, they didn't care about Jews or not Jews or whatever, who were ready to commit these atrocities. And the Nazis took it further and created that education, to hate even more, to dehumanize even more, that you had 12-year-olds grabbing weapons in 1945 from preventing that country that was already done. They were on their knees. The Russians were in Berlin. They were done. And you had 9 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old from the Hitler Youth grabbing weapons, trying to defend this country, knowing that they killed Jews. systematically. And they knew it. And in that case, they could know it because that's how they were brought up. They were dehumanized completely. So we have to actually, like creating anti-Hitler youth, you know, do exactly the opposite. Teach
what would that look
compassion.
Like? What would that?
Teach compassion. Teach every child from, and like you said, you're as a parent coach, you mentioned it so often already as well. Listen to the children to see what problems they have, what social output they use to express their problems, and then go back always to the fear. Mostly it is fear of missing out, not being loved by the parents, and so on and so on. As I said, we tell our children to shut up and sit down, even though we taught them to walk and talk, and a child doesn't understand why. You taught me that. Now he's supposed to shut up. I don't understand. And they start acting up, and all of a sudden the parent says, oh, this child is always acting up. And the children hear that. You know? No, we have to sit down and really stop labeling our children. For the most part, it's, pardon my, this is the fault of the parents, because they taught to the children. Listen, these 3-year-olds, they have something to say. Yeah, they have something to say. They have something to say. And one more important thing, I think that's very often overlooked. And everybody can agree, because everybody was either a child or probably has had children or grandchildren, and they mess up at some point. And what happens usually, and this is, people have to understand to differ, that loving and liking somebody is not the same thing. Like I talked with my wife a lot about that, and we are very fortunate. We love each other, but we also like each other very much. And this is perfect. But when a kid is messing up, when your child is messing up, when Myra is coming out of school and is messing up or whatever, there's probably a possibility that you don't like her for a moment, right? That possibility is probably there. But does it mean you don't love her? No. And this is important. Make sure, you as parents, you're out there listening, to make sure when you have these moments that you don't like your children, you can let them know. You don't have to have sympathy for what they messed up, but you can have empathy for the reasons where it's coming from. Try to find out where it leads to, so it doesn't happen again. Make sure, hey, I don't like you and I don't like you right now for what you've done, but I love you unconditionally, no matter what. Even if you mess up more, you will be my child, always.
TM, I want to tell you,
always will be able to come back.
You will always be able to come back. That's powerful, right? Because children think like my parent doesn't love me.
It's never too late. And it's never too little, never too late. There we go. With the children, with anybody.
Rabbi Mark Kunis here in Atlanta gave for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur many years ago. He gave out a card, which I still have when I daven, when I pray, and it says on one side, it's never too late, and on the other side, it says it's later than you think. And
that's true.
We want to connect with our children where they are now. We have a very short period of time before they're out of the house and on their own. And we often prayed for these children. Are we listening? I'm talking to myself. Are we listening enough? Are we listening and really being there for them? And by the way, as a guidance counselor, as a former guidance counselor, I know that when children are not listened to, and TM, you'll chime in, that when children are not listened to, they're much more likely, this is an extreme thing I'm going to say right now, down the road, the appeal for, again, this is a very black and white perspective, the appeal for a gang doesn't seem so far off, because look, they're getting love and they're getting attention, they're getting connection and getting praised for what they might not be getting at home. That's why.
Join a jihadist group, or join the clan, or join the skinheads, whatever appeals, whatever resonates with you at that moment, you will take it. Right. And that's unfortunate, but somebody, again, you're in a box and somebody will pull you out, somebody who's listening.
Right.
So don't let the bad guys be the ones who are listening. Let us be the ones who are listening.
Well, that's powerful. And also, and show the love, just and stop and listen. Stop, look, we say stop, drop, and roll when there's a fire. Stop, drop, and roll. And for parents, Stop, drop, and listen. Stop, sit, and listen and look. Stop, what is it? Stop, look, and listen. It's so hard to do. So in today, especially today, in our very fast society, stop, drop, stop, look, and listen.
Because we
And
don't
that
have
alone
time,
is a
right?
challenge. And it doesn't mean every time. It just means try once and then it gets easier. No, TM, I have
But
so
also
much.
have to take the time.
Oh, absolutely. It's making time. It's carving out time. Time doesn't, we all have the same hours in the day. Oh, right. What is our priority in the moment? It's a constant search for what's important, right? How do we use our time? So, so again, I want just to give a reminder that if anybody would like to get a copy of 25 meaningful ways to say, I love you, to please put 25 ways in the chat or in the comments with your email, and I will get that out to you. TM, I just want to wrap up. We'll do this again. We'll do it again. We have so much to.
Absolutely. And
You
if
know,
somebody wants to check out my website, tmgarret.com, you can find everything what I'm doing there as well.
Yes,
I
you
would
are.
love to see you there.
TM, I want to say that I have been and I continue to be inspired by you and the growth that you've made in your life, by willing to be open, by willing to keep the door open, by willing to question yourself. As a young child, even, you were in for 10 years, but your willingness to say, wait a minute, why do I believe this? You questioned yourself, you kept the door open, and you were willing to break down the barrier for just a split second to see humanity. There's a split second to question yourself. And the path that it's led you on toward creating change for people who are still erasing, you're doing to erase the hate, right? The tattoos that, the anti-Semitic, the hate, tattoos that people put on their bodies at a time when they believed in it. You're doing everything you can to support people who are trying to get out of a life of hatred. I'm so inspired by that and how the power of compassion and unconditional love and empathy can change the world, and just making time and listening. May you just continue to be blessed to shine your light and your light from your life then, from your life now, to inspire others to growth and to change and see what's possible, not expecting overnight change, but baby steps toward growth, which is possible for all of us as individuals, as parents, as educators, as people, as community leaders, as members of the world. How we can not put people into a box, not just seek to label, but to understand. So please, any closing words?
Just listen to your children, to your neighbors, to your friends, to your family members, to your spouses. Listen before other people do it. The bad guys, for example.
Thank you so much, TM, for your time and for your generosity and your willingness to share your insights. And may the souls, the neshamas of those who were brutally murdered and just thrown to the side during the Holocaust, may this serve as a rising up of their souls and their neshamas, and that they're not forgotten, and God willing, never happen again. And that we are here to love and learn and grow. And thank you for shining your light on that.
Thank you for having me today.
Okay. Thank you, TM. Okay. Bye, everybody.